Hi, I'm Willow Ward, 33, a Denver-based event planner living in the picture-perfect Evergreen Meadows, HOA. I always believed community meant unconditional support until Mr. Harlan Reeves's reading shattered everything I thought I knew. Growing up in this gated slice of suburban heaven, I was always the invisible one, the middle resident sandwiched between the brilliant Courtney Whitaker, who blazed through law school with honors and now sat as HOA board secretary, and her charming younger brother Bradley, who could convince the entire board to waive rules with nothing but a smile and a sob story. I wasn't the star, wasn't the baby, just Willow, the reliable one who never caused trouble, the one whose achievements were acknowledged with distracted nods while Courtney and Bradley received lavish community awards and free passes on every covenant violation. Standing in the grand hall of the Evergreen Meadows Community Center, I watched Karen Whitaker, the self-appointed HOA president and matriarch of this little kingdom, set fire to the $29 million check Mr. Harlan left me. I smiled, not because I was defeated, but because I knew what she didn't. What she burned was just paper. The HOA never saw me coming. That was their first mistake. The neighborhood looked perfect from the outside. Family vacations to the clubhouse pool. Private schools for the golden kids. Country club memberships enforced by Karen's iron fist wrapped in pastel blazers, and for the property value smiles. Karen had built her little empire enforcing the covenants she wrote herself. Grass exactly 2.5 inches. Only approved beige siding tones. Flower beds symmetrical to the millimeter. No flags over 3 feet. Trash cans hidden on Tuesdays or face a $500 fine. Her husband Mark managed the social calendar with military precision. They raised the board to believe appearances mattered above all else. Stand up straight. Willow, your yard reflects on all of us. Karen would hiss before every monthly meeting, her voice dripping that fake honey politeness that made your skin crawl. Karen's criticism was more direct. Why can't you be more like Courtney? She knows how to make connections and keep her lawn perfect. Courtney internalized their values perfectly. She became a corporate attorney at one of Denver's top firms, married Ryan Phillips, heir to a real estate mini-empire, and delivered the perfect grandchildren right on schedule. Karen beamed with pride at every turn of her charmed life, waving Courtney's photos at board meetings like trophies. Bradley mastered the art of charming manipulation. He failed out of 3 colleges, but somehow convinced Karen it was the institution's fault. She funded his entrepreneurial ventures that never materialized and waived his fines while he found himself in a clubhouse bar. And then there was me. I started small, planning friends' birthday parties in college, coordinating charity events for extra cash. I discovered I had a knack for bringing visions to life, for creating moments people would remember. When I announced I was starting Ever After events instead of pursuing a respectable career, Karen laughed right there in the boardroom. Event planning won't pay the bills like law, but have your little hobby if you must, though your balloon arches violate the decorative covenant. Dear, her husband Mark was more cutting. Oh, Willow, always settling for less. Just make sure those parties don't spill into the street or we'll have to fine you again. I learned to smile and nod, to keep my dreams close to my chest. What they didn't know couldn't be used against me. The exploitation started small. When Courtney and Ryan were buying their first mansion, because a regular house wouldn't do for the board secretary, Karen called me at 8 p.m. on a Friday. Willow, Courtney needs a bit of help with her down payment. $20,000. You could transfer it today. Not, would you consider, just the expectation that I would hand over my savings. Karen, that's almost everything I've saved for my business expansion, I explained calmly. Her voice turned cold, that saccharine tone sharpening like a knife. Community helps community. Willow, Courtney would do the same for you. It's for the property values. But Courtney wouldn't. and we both knew it. I transferred the money the next day. Courtney never thanked me. 6 months later, at the annual HOA picnic, she complained about this shoddy workmanship in her $2.5 million home while I calculated how many events I would need to book to replace my dwindling savings. Willow's still stuck in the basement with her balloons. Courtney laughed when Karen asked about my business. Everyone chuckled, even Bradley, who was living off Karen's generosity and waived fines. I smiled tightly. Business is actually growing steadily. Karen raised an eyebrow. Well, don't come asking the HOA for help when it fails. We're putting all our extra into Bradley's new tech venture. The tech venture that existed only in PowerPoint slides in Bradley's imagination. These patterns repeated for years. The $20,000 community contribution was never repaid. My business achievements were dismissed as hobby fluff. Holiday gatherings at the clubhouse became exercises in endurance as I listened to Courtney and Ryan discuss their investment portfolio while Bradley detailed vacations funded by Karen's discretionary fund. When I mentioned signing a major corporate client, the conversation swiftly turned to Courtney's recent promotion. What they didn't know was that I was building something extraordinary. Ever after events grew from my tiny garage to a downtown office with a staff of 15. I diversified, becoming a silent partner in 2 upscale Denver restaurants. I patented an event decor system that generated royalties exceeding $500,000 annually. I created Cascade Holdings LLC to manage my growing investments, now valued at $4.2 million. All while the HOA believed I was barely making rent and racking up violations. I had my reasons for the secrecy. Every time I'd shared a success, it was either weaponized against me or became a target for new special assessments. So I learned to compartmentalize, smile at every HOA potluck while building my empire in silence. Mr. Harlan Reeves was different. The founding resident who built half the homes after Vietnam. He recognized something in me, the same quiet determination he once had while Karen fawned over Courtney's academic honors and Bradley's charm. Harlan would wink at me across the clubhouse table. The quiet ones change the world when no one's looking, he'd whisper. Some flowers bloom best in the shade. Willow, you keep growing your way. I see you. When his wife passed 3 years ago, Harlan retreated from most gatherings. I visited him weekly, bringing homemade bread and updates on my business. He never betrayed my confidence, understanding instinctively why I kept my success private. I never expected his estate to be substantial. He lived modestly in the same ranch house he'd built in the 1970s. But his construction company had quietly diversified into commercial real estate with holdings throughout Colorado. When he passed last winter, I grieved genuinely. He was the one person in this neighborhood who saw me clearly. The will reading was scheduled at the community center. March 15th, 2024, at 2 p.m. I arrived early, choosing a seat near the back. Karen entered like visiting royalty, nodding to distant residents and friends. Her pastel blazer perfectly pressed. Courtney and Ryan followed, Courtney's hand resting protectively over her pregnant belly, their 3rd child. Another perfect addition to the HOA bloodline. Bradley stumbled in late, sunglasses hiding what were likely hungover eyes. Mr. Harlan's attorney, Mr. Donovan, began reading the standard preambles. Small bequests were distributed, his fishing gear to a longtime friend, his vintage car to a nephew, charitable donations to veterans organizations. Karen shifted impatiently, waiting for the main event, already calculating how the money could benefit the community, meaning her discretionary fund for Courtney's next vacation home. And to my neighbor Willow Marie Ward, Mr. Donovan announced, I leave the sum of $29 million. The room froze. I felt 50 pairs of eyes swivel toward me. There must be a mistake, Karen said, her voice tight with that practiced concern. Harlan wouldn't have. There's no mistake. Mrs. Whitaker. Mr. Donovan replied firmly, lifting a sealed envelope. The funds are represented by this certified check along with transfer instructions for Ms. Ward. He walked across the room and handed me the thick envelope. I could feel the weight of the check inside, the embossed paper heavy with promise. My hands trembled slightly as I accepted it. What happened next occurred so quickly I barely had time to react. Karen snatched the envelope from my hands, her face flushed with anger. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "Willow isn't ready for that kind of responsibility. She can't even keep her lawn compliant." In 3 quick strides, she crossed to the ornate fireplace that heated the grand hall. With deliberate movements, she extracted the check, held it up for all to see, and then dropped it into the flames. Mark stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder in solidarity. The room gasped collectively. Courtney's husband, Ryan, half rose from his seat, face pale with shock. "Mr. Donovan sputtered about legal implications, but all I could focus on was the way the flames curled around Mr. Harlan's last gift to me, turning his belief in me to ash. And I smiled, not because I was broken, not because I accepted their cruelty. I smiled because in that moment, everything crystallized. This wasn't about money. It was about control. It was about maintaining the HOA hierarchy with me firmly at the bottom. It was about ensuring I would always need their guidance, always be less than, always be the one who couldn't possibly manage without Karen's approval. That was the moment I stopped being their pawn. As the residents dispersed in shocked whispers, Karen approached me. Her hand on my arm felt like a brand. "It's for the best, darling," she said, her voice honey-sweet for the benefit of lingering neighbors. "We'll invest a portion that's appropriate for you. You know how impulsive you can be with those event decorations. I had never made an impulsive decision in my life." "You'll thank us later," Mark added, already reaching for his phone. "I'll call the bank tomorrow." I nodded docilely, playing the role they expected, the disappointing resident, grateful for their intervention. As they walked away, satisfied with my apparent submission, Courtney's Aunt June approached. What they did wasn't legal. She whispered, "The check may be gone, but the bequest still stands. You could fight this." I squeezed her hand. "I know," I said simply. What Karen didn't realize, burning the check was theatrical but meaningless. Mr. Donovan had already filed the necessary paperwork. The funds were securely held in trust, awaiting my formal acceptance. The check was merely symbolic, Mr. Harlan's way of ensuring the neighborhood witnessed his confidence in me. What Karen also didn't know, I had been recording our HOA interactions for over a year, not constantly, but strategically, when fines were discussed, when demands were made, when my business was belittled. My phone captured Courtney's mocking comments, Karen's dismissals, Mark's manipulations, discussions about my $20,000 contribution, conversations where they planned to allocate my inheritance among board favorites. What began as self-protection became evidence. I left the will reading and drove straight to Morrison & Associates, a law firm specializing in estate and HOA litigation. I had researched them months earlier after a conversation with Mr. Harlan that hinted at his intentions. I handed over my recordings, detailed the day's events, and signed a retainer agreement. "We'll move carefully," Ms. Morrison advised. "Build the case methodically." When is Courtney's wedding reception? July 12th at the Belmont Clubhouse. Why? She smiled thinly. Because timing matters in these situations. Can you continue playing along until then? And so I did. For 4 months, I nodded at every HOA financial advice meeting. I listened to Courtney describe how she would help me invest the modest portion of Mr. Harlan's money that would eventually come my way. I watched Bradley suddenly develop an interest in my well-being, suggesting business partnerships that would primarily benefit him, all while the legal machinery turned quietly behind the scenes. My ally through this period was Aunt June, never close to her brother-in-law or Karen. She had witnessed years of their manipulation as a family law attorney turned HOA watchdog. She recognized the patterns of financial abuse and selective enforcement. She provided additional documentation, connected me with financial forensic experts, and kept me informed of board discussions I wasn't privy to. They're planning to establish a conservatorship. She warned me in late June, claiming you're financially irresponsible, citing every fine you ever paid. That time your rent was late during college. The credit card debt at 23, debt I'd accumulated buying professional attire for interviews when the board refused to help. They won't succeed, I assured her. Not with what we have prepared. July 12th arrived with picture-perfect Colorado weather. The Belmont Clubhouse, Karen's pride and joy. A crystal palace of a ballroom with 19th-century chandeliers and panoramic mountain views, had been Courtney and Ryan's dream venue since their engagement. Courtney had been insufferable about securing it, reminding everyone repeatedly that they'd had to book 2 years in advance and that any unapproved decorations would violate Covenant 17B. I arrived fashionably late, dressed in a designer gown that cost more than Karen believed I earned in a month. The reception was in full swing. Courtney and Ryan gliding across the dance floor like HOA royalty. Karen holding court near the head table, dispensing community wisdom. Bradley charming a bridesmaid by the bar. MS. Morrison arrived precisely on schedule, accompanied by Mr. Donovan and 2 sheriff's deputies. I met them at the service entrance where the audio-visual technician waited with the prepared presentation. At 9:30 p.m., the crystal-clear chime of silver against glass cut through the music. Aunt June stood at the center of the room, requesting attention for a special toast. As the confused but obliging crowd gathered, I stepped onto the small stage where the band had been playing. I'd like to congratulate my neighbor Courtney and her husband. I began, my voice steady despite the hammering of my heart. Community is everything, as we've all been taught. Karen's face shifted from surprise to weariness. Mark checked his watch impatiently. In honor of this occasion, I'd like to share some neighborhood memories. I continued. The lights dimmed. The projection screen descended. And then there they were, Karen and the board, larger than life, their voices filling the ballroom. Willow isn't ready for that kind of responsibility. Karen's voice crisp and clear from the will reading footage. The video shifted to the boardroom 3 weeks later. Once we secure control of the funds, we'll need to revise the disbursement schedule. Courtney's second property takes priority. Another clip, Courtney and Ryan in their kitchen. Once Mom and Dad secure the money, we'll finally have enough for the Aspen condo. Willow will never know the difference. She can't even manage her little party business. The screen filled with documentation, bank transfers showing my $20,000 contribution, financial projections prepared by Mark allocating my inheritance among board favorites. The petition for financial conservatorship they had quietly filed. And finally the moment at the will reading when Karen burned the check, captured perfectly on the security cameras Mr. Donovan had arranged to have activated. The ballroom was deadly silent. Courtney's porcelain complexion had turned gray. Ryan's jaw worked soundlessly. Karen gripped the edge of table, her knuckles white. Mark stood frozen, the calculation visible behind his eyes as he assessed the damage. You burned the check, I said into the silence. But you can't burn the truth. Here's what you never wanted anyone to see. The screen filled with images of Ever After Events headquarters, newspaper clippings about my business success, financial statements showing my company's $3 million annual revenue, documentation of my restaurant partnerships, patent certificates, and investment portfolios. While you were deciding I wasn't capable, I built this, all of it, without your help. without your connections, without your belief. The deputy stepped forward, serving Karen and Mark with papers. MS. Morrison stood at the back of the room, her expression professionally neutral. These are fraud charges, I explained to the stunned crowd, attempting to misappropriate an inheritance through deception and manipulation. The $5 million civil suit for defamation and financial abuse will be filed separately. Karen found her voice first. Willow, this is a neighborhood matter. We don't air our disagreements like this. Her eyes darted around the room, assessing the social damage. We were protecting the community. From what? Karen? From independence? From success? From the truth that I never needed your protection. Courtney surged forward, her designer gown swishing angrily. This is slander. How dare you ruin my wedding reception with these lies? The only lies here were yours. I replied calmly. And it's not slander when it's documented truth. Mark attempted damage control, his voice low and urgent. Let's talk privately. Willow, we can work this out as a community. We're past that point. I said, way past. Aunt June moved to stand beside me, a quiet but powerful statement of alliance. Several of Karen's society friends were already edging toward the exits, eager to spread the news. Ryan's business associates huddled in a corner. Phones out. Damage assessment in progress. Bradley, surprisingly, simply lifted his champagne glass in my direction, a gesture that might have been respect. The aftermath was swift and comprehensive. Karen's social standing collapsed overnight. Courtney took a leave of absence from her law firm as the scandal spread through legal circles and HOA forums. Ryan's family distanced themselves, concerned about the impact on their business reputation. Mark's accounting clients began quietly transferring their business elsewhere. The legal consequences were equally devastating. With Mr. Donovan's documentation and my recordings, the courts quickly ruled that the inheritance was legally mine. The fraud case against Karen and the board moved forward, ultimately resulting in substantial financial penalties and Karen's permanent removal from the presidency. The conservatorship petition was not only dismissed, but became evidence of their attempted financial abuse. Most painfully for them, their carefully constructed image of benevolent community leadership was shattered. The neighborhood others had envied for decades was revealed as a facade concealing manipulation, selective enforcement, and exploitation. I relocated to Seattle 2 months later, expanding ever after events to a national platform. The distance provided clarity and peace I hadn't realized I needed. I established the Harlan Reeves Foundation, using a portion of my inheritance to support young entrepreneurs fighting unfair HOA restrictions. Karen and Mark divorced within 6 months. Their partnership apparently couldn't withstand public scrutiny or financial setback. Courtney and Ryan downsized dramatically, their dream of an Aspen condo abandoned. Bradley surprisingly enrolled in community college, studying business administration with a focus on ethical leadership. Aunt June visits regularly, bringing updates. I no longer seek their approval. The past is behind me now. I met James at a business conference in Vancouver, a tech entrepreneur with kind eyes and a tendency to ask questions and actually listen to the answers. On our third date, he confessed he'd researched me before asking me out. Your neighborhood situation was all over the business news last year. He admitted, I was impressed by how you handled it. Integrity isn't always the easy path. It wasn't easy. The hardest part wasn't the confrontation or even the legal battle that followed. It was accepting that the community I thought I had, the one I had tried so desperately to please, had never truly existed. Grieving that illusion was necessary before I could embrace the life waiting beyond it. Mr. Harlan was right about quiet determination. He saw in me what Karen never could. Not just potential, but actual achievement. He knew the check would be meaningless financially, but powerful symbolically. His final gift wasn't the money. It was the catalyst for my freedom. Sometimes I think about that moment in the community center, watching the check burn. The strange sense of clarity that washed over me as the flames consumed the paper. The realization that Karen's action had finally, irrevocably released me from hoping for their approval. What she burned was just paper. What I kept was my dignity, my truth, and the life I built beyond their lies. And that's worth far more than any check. Tonight, looking out over Seattle's twinkling skyline from my penthouse office, I raise a glass to Mr. Harlan Reeves, to Aunt June, to the woman I've become, to the family I'm creating now, one built on respect and genuine support. And yes, sometimes I even toast Karen and the board. After all, without their betrayal, I might never have found the courage to fully claim my life. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't confrontation, but the joy of living well beyond the constraints others tried to impose. The event planner in me appreciates the symmetry of it all. How the scene they staged at the Willow reading became the prologue to a story they never anticipated. How their attempt to diminish me became the spotlight that illuminated my strength. That's the thing about trying to burn someone's dreams. Sometimes from those ashes, they build an empire. The new HOA board, elected in the wake of the scandal, reformed the covenants almost overnight. No more selective enforcement. No more discretionary funds that mysteriously funded Karen's family vacations. Residents who had suffered in silence finally spoke up, sharing their own recordings and stories. The once feared pastel blazer empire crumbled under the weight of its own hypocrisy, and the neighborhood breathed a little easier. Grass could be 2.6 inches without a SWAT team. Flags flew a little higher, and event planners like me could actually decorate without fear of midnight citations. Dark humor rippled through the community forums. Karen's reign ended hotter than that check she burned. Talk about karma in 4K. I still get the occasional message from former neighbors, some apologetic, some just curious. Courtney sent one rambling email trying to reconcile for the children's sake, but I deleted it with a satisfied click. Bradley actually showed up at a foundation event once, sober and humble, offering to volunteer. I let him. People can change, I suppose, when the spotlight finally turns their way. As for Karen, last I heard she moved to a non-HOA retirement community in Arizona. Ironic. Really, the woman who lived to control every blade of grass now lives where the rules are whatever the wind decides. Looking back, the absurdity still makes me laugh in that tight, bitter way that feels like justice. All those years of measuring my life against their ridiculous standards, lawn height, siding color, the sacred beige empire, while they bent every rule for their own. Karen preaching community values with one hand while pocketing my $20,000 donation with the other. The way she'd smile that tight smile and say, "It's for the property values, dear," right before slapping another fine on my door. It was never about grass or flowers. It was always about power, about keeping the invisible ones invisible so the golden ones could shine. Mr. Harlan saw through it. He saw me, and in the end, his quiet faith was louder than all Karen's amplified microphones at board meetings. James and I just bought a house, non-HOA, of course. Wide open yard, whatever color flowers I want. A flagpole tall enough to salute the mountains. No covenants, no meetings, no pastel blazer tyrants. When the realtor asked if I wanted any restrictions in the deed, I laughed until I cried. Just one, I said. No beige. Every once in a while I drive past Evergreen Meadows on the way to Denver. The lawns still look perfect. The siding still matches. But something's different. The fear is gone. Residents wave without checking over their shoulders. The clubhouse still hosts weddings, but no one burns checks anymore. And sometimes, late at night, I open the safe in my office and pull out the only thing I kept from that day, the charred corner of Mr. Harlan Sheck that somehow survived the flames. I keep it as a reminder, paper burns, but truth doesn't. Control freaks can torch symbols, but they can't torch the empire you built in the shadows. So here's to the quiet ones. The ones who smile while the Karens of the world measure their grass. The ones who record every petty violation and every hypocritical speech. The ones who wait, patient and smiling, until the perfect moment to turn the spotlight around. Because when you finally do, the flames that were meant to destroy you become the bonfire that lights your way forward. In a neighborhood that tried to keep you small, it learns the hard way that the middle resident, the invisible one, can burn brighter than any $29 million check ever could. That's the real covenant. The one no board can write, no president can enforce. Live well, speak truth, and never, ever let them measure your worth by the height of your lawn.